This is a very real crisis. It's unfortunate, though, that the Liberals have spent the last 10 years talking about deficits as being something that they're allowed to do and there's no impact.
That dirty dog, he did it again. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, we're finding out Mark Carney's about to make a big military purchase from the United States that will directly enrich himself. We also got Pierre Poilievre blasting Mark Carney in the House. Let's jump into this.
Mr. Speaker, crime victims don't want the Prime Minister's sympathy. They want to know why he's broken his promise. They want to know why liberal bail remains in place, allowing for the same repeat offenders to offend again and again. The body of a woman was found in the last few days in St. Jerome, Quebec, killed by her partner, who had been arrested 30 times before but released on liberal bail. Will the Prime Minister finally scrap liberal bail, or better yet, get out of the way so that we can do the jobs ourselves?
Mr. Speaker, this government is bringing forward comprehensive bail reform. This comprehensive bail reform is based on extensive consultations with the provinces and territories. It's based on extensive discussions with law enforcement. It is based on evidence. It is not based on cut and paste American bail laws. It's a bail law that works. We are tough on crime and firm on the rights of Canadians.
Yeah, it's an unbelievably weak response. He just brought up that a woman was ended after her boyfriend was arrested 30 times and let out once again to finally end her, and that's his response. They're tough on crime. They don't want American style. Are you kidding me?
To see the Prime Minister rant and rave and point his finger at police after they have been crying out for this government to scrap liberal bail for years. We have Constable Greg Pershella, who was killed by a man released yet again on bail. We have a woman killed by her husband after he was arrested and released 30 times because of liberal laws. We have 1,600 crimes every single day in this country because of the liberal laws. Will he stop screaming, hollering, and jabbing his finger and scrap liberal bail?
1,600 crimes per day. He just mentioned a couple crimes. I mean, Daniel Senecal, that monster who snuck into a 3-year-old's bedroom, he was out on bail. And once again, they get to commit more crimes. There's going to be a breaking point here where Canadians say enough is enough. We're going to police the streets ourselves. We're going to handle the situation ourselves like they did back in the old days. Thus, you have that game that is no longer played in schools, Hangman. That came from somewhere. It came from dealing with problems in the city, in the towns. They were brought out to the town square and they showed exactly what happened if you broke the law. There will be a point where Canadians snap. They like this crime, corruption, and chaos. That's why they're allowing it in our country. They need it to destabilize our democracy. So something is going to break here. I don't know what's going to happen first, though.
Mr. Speaker, this government, which has been in place for 6 months, has undertaken comprehensive consultations with law enforcement, with the provinces, based on evidence, is bringing forward the toughest bail legislation and sentencing legislation that will work, not one imported from the United States. Hear, hear.
This guy talks down the United States when he's 91% invested in the United States. That's real rich.
Mr. Speaker, if the government wants any proof that it's been in place for 10 years, the Justice Minister that Prime Minister named is the guy who ruined our immigration system, and then he went on to ruin our housing system, and now 6 months after this Prime Minister looked Canadians in the eye and promised to scrap liberal bail, that bail is still in place, and every day, violent repeat offenders are released on our streets, massacring our people. Will the Prime Minister stop making excuses? They've had 10 years. He's had 6 months. Canadians cannot afford to wait anymore. When will he scrap liberal bail?
Even where I'm sitting here, I heard a blood-curdling scream down in the ravine, and some lady was ended down there. That's how bad things are. Mark Carney says he doesn't want American style in Canada, yet here he is, 91% invested in the United States of America. How invested in Canada really is he? 0.53%. How do Liberal voters take him serious?
Mr. Speaker, I am heartened by the knowledge that the members opposite will be supporting comprehensive bail reform when it is brought forward in a few weeks before this House. Bail reform that works, bail reform that's tough on crime, bail reform that is consistent with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
The Honourable Leader.
They won't change anything unless one of them or one of their spouses, their kids get ended or violated or whatever, or something bad happens to them from one of these home invaders. They won't touch it until then.
Speaker, this government's bail laws violate the charter rights of 1,600 people every single day. Their names are victims. They are the people who get hit over the head with baseball bats, who get robbed, who have their children violated in what should be the safety of their own houses. We have a 3-year-old who was raped by a repeat offender out on liberal release. We have a constable shot to death by someone out on liberal release. And now we have a woman murdered by her own partner who was out on liberal release. How many have to die before he gets rid of liberal bail?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government is taking measures against crime. We are tightening our borders. We are reinforcing the number of RCMP.
These guys haven't hired any border guards. They're supposed to hire 1,000. They've hired 0 because Carney doesn't want to do anything that even resembles getting a deal with Donald Trump. On the flip side, what do we see today? U.S. State Department greenlights potential sale of $2.4 billion mobile rocket system to Canada. And just wait for it. This is going to blow your mind. So Mark Carney and his team are making a deal here with America to spend billions of dollars, not use this in negotiating with the Americans. Here's the official release here. October 1st, just yesterday, the State Department has made the determination approving a possible foreign military sale, because they're not going to sell this just to anyone, to the government of Canada of M142 high mobility artillery rocket systems and related equipment for an estimated $1.75 billion. That's US dollars. This is on an American website. It's $2.4 billion Canadian dollars. The Defense Security Cooperation Agreement delivered the required certification notifying Congress. Proposed sale will improve Canada's ability to meet current and future threats by providing the HIMARS long-range precision rocket systems. This benefits America. This should be negotiated into a deal. Once again, Mark Carney not acting in Canada's best interest. He's acting in America's best interest. And as it says right here in this press release, and it says right here, the approval by the U.S. Defense Secretary Cooperation Agency is the first major hurdle in the process for the Canadian military to acquire the Lockheed Martin built system, which gained a lot of public attention a few years ago as Ukraine sought to get its own rocket-propelled artillery to defend against the Russian invasion. Now, why is this important that Lockheed Martin is getting this contract? Lockheed Martin, a big American defense contractor. So what? Except if we look at Mark Carney's stocks, you know where this is going. We scroll in. Lockheed Martin right there. Lockheed Martin Corp, defense contractor. Mark Carney is directly profiting, sending $2.4 billion, a $2.4 billion sale to America. This directly boosts the value of his own stocks in Lockheed Martin. So I'm going to be creating a new board on here of Mark Carney's direct conflicts of interest. There's a whole bunch of them. Obviously, Ukraine. Let's talk about this for a second. Lockheed Martin is expected to join this list of companies that will be helping rebuild Ukraine. And there he is again, Mark Carney profiting off of everything. This guy's like a symbiotic slug that just tries to suck cash out of every single thing. While Lockheed Martin is not going to be one of the main companies rebuilding Ukraine, they will be part of rebuilding their defenses. You can see here, the Department of Defense will be providing these HMARs, what we were just talking about here. Lockheed Martin makes these, 40 of them to Ukraine to bolster their systems here. We also got it here, Ukraine Security Assistance. And if we scroll down, Lockheed Martin right there, you can see obligated in the millions, $4.6 billion air defense. Our Lockheed Martin, major defense contractor, obviously big time involvement here in Ukraine's defense right now and going forward once this whole conflict is ended. And Mark Carney here, don't worry, he's going to be making money from this. This should be news across Canada. $2.4 billion deal that will directly enrich himself. Now let's look at Lockheed Martin's stock here. So over on Yahoo Finance, and you already see the stock. You see the stock here. This is back in 2000 all the way up until today. Lockheed Martin just makes money hand over fist. And here's the past 10 years. You can see this graph only goes up. And we can see when the exact announcement was made right here. And what did the stock do immediately? Boom, shot up to the moon. It's bobbling a bit. This is within the last 2 days. Looking back a year, 2, 3 years from now, Mark Carney probably will have made millions of dollars off of just this single investment of our tax dollars in America. And I should clarify, we probably should be investing in stuff. I don't know if it's this or other military equipment. We should be. We need to be. But Mark Carney can't be profiting from this. And he should be using this to get a deal. But he doesn't want to because he needs to get a majority government. He has to spook the clueless liberal Canadians once again to get reelected, hopefully getting a majority. And then he's just going to keep doing this. Because once again, Mark Carney, it does not have Canada's best interest at heart. He has America's. He doesn't care about Canadians. I don't know how else to say it.
Are introducing in the next few weeks the most comprehensive bail reforms and toughening of sentencing laws. Bail reform that will work. Bail reform that will work, not bail reform that is copied from our neighbor to the south.
They already brought in a bail reform. That is the bail reform that allows the same offenders to be released 150 times a year. His justice minister voted to allow repeat offenders, violent sex offenders, to do their sentences in their living room. That is their policy. We have a bill before the House today that we could pass through all stages right now if the Prime Minister didn't care about who got the credit. Will he put aside partisanship and grandstanding and join with us to scrap Liberal bail, save lives for Canadians, or will he just get out of the way?
The right.
Mr. Speaker, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms won't just get out of the way as the member opposite wishes.
Hear, hear.
What this country needs, what those victims deserve, what all Canadians deserve is bail reform and sentencing laws that work. That is what this government is bringing forward. We invite the members opposite. We share the same objectives. We invite the members opposite to join us in swift passage of the government's bail reform when it's...
Hear, hear.
With Carney doing nothing around here, we're seeing stuff like this. Alberta separatists boast cabinet-level meeting with Trump administration. We're literally 1 degree of separation from the Oval Office, Rath said on Monday's meeting. This movement is only going to get stronger. And if this actually gets some legs to it, then you're going to see Quebec do the same thing. Canada is going to fracture. Then Carney's plans are going to go out the window. Moving over to CTV, we got this panel here. They're going to mention a loan, which was a $400 million loan to Algoma Steel. Once again, Mark Carney trying to bail out individual companies versus just making a deal with Donald Trump. He could do that. He could do that right now. He doesn't want to, though, because he needs to have another election.
Start with you. I found it interesting today that in particular behind the scenes, the government was really conveying, hey, this loan we announced today is an example of why the deficit will be a larger number than we originally thought. They're trying, I think, attempting to lay some groundwork to try and put forward a case for that. The leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, was asked about things like that and came back with, condemnation, basically, whatever the reason is for a bigger deficit. And as you heard him say, you're not really a conservative prime minister, even though you've been characterized as such. What do you think of the way that those arguments are bearing out?
Yeah, so no surprise that the government's going to lay the groundwork for whatever is going to be in the budget. In this case, it looks like some of the things they're worried about or that they want to flag with Canadians before they actually introduce the budget is indeed the deficit. And they are, as you mentioned, trying to link it to things that they hope people would support and saying these are some of the reasons why we may have a larger deficit than we would like. And in terms of Poilievre's tack, I think it's the right approach, obviously, from his point of view, to say, to try to lay his groundwork and say that this is going to be a real problem, whatever the deficit is, right? He's obviously going to try to say that this is all mismanagement on Carney's front. Carney and co will probably, I would argue, look, we just got here, give us some time. We're acting boldly on major projects, trying to get revenue in, trying to get the economy going. We're going to be asking departments to come with proposals to cut up as high as up to 15% of expenditures, which one can certainly argue that you can't necessarily do that in budget one, but you get those ideas, and over time you can, with a few budgets, try to get to that number or close to that number for some departments. So I think there's going to be a bit of a game of trying to explain and lay the groundwork before the budget. Ultimately, when people see the budget, the deficit is definitely going to be the thing that we probably all chat about, especially given Carney kind of came in with this idea that he would be fiscally more focused than the Trudeau.
Yeah, so Mr. Banker here, globalist banker, is beefing up the deficit. Turns out he's the worst person to have in power. Canadians thought Banker must be good, must trust the guy. They didn't look into the guy, they did no research, blindly voted for the guy, and now many Canadians will be losing their jobs because they made that vote. And Carney could solve this problem tomorrow. He can make a deal with Donald Trump. He doesn't want to because he needs him as the bad guy for his next election. This is all political. It's selfish and political. Carney wants to roll his net zero agenda. There needs to be rules that the Prime Minister has to act in Canada's best interest, or a referendum is called and we can get rid of this person. Right now we have a globalist banker running Canada as his own personal little corporation that he's trying to make money off of, and he's very successfully doing that. He's made millions of dollars since becoming Prime Minister.
We've talked on a number of occasions on this panel specifically about like the politics of deficits, right? Like how much do people care? You obviously have, very intimate experience with that. The context has definitely changed over the last 10 years. Is the argument around mismanagement easier to land with someone like Justin Trudeau than Mark Carney, or is there a potential vulnerability for the Carney government because of what Brian just laid out, that Mark Carney did position himself so clearly during the election as a manager, a competent manager of the economy?
Yeah, no question that was a main selling point for Mr. Carney during the campaign. But I think that Canadians still hang their hats on that. Canadians are still looking at him as the person who can stand up to Trump, deal with the budgetary situation, and they know that there was already a massive deficit projected in the 60 billion range, so it might grow to 70 or 90 billion. They know that that's a possibility, and they also know that even though it is a bit self-serving to say, oh, Algoma Steel, here's a check for $500 million from Ontario and the feds, and that's why we're running up this deficit. People see through that, but they also know that it's necessary. Because if you don't have these big industries, and if they all fail because of the short-term effect of these Trump tariffs, then Canada is the loser long-term. I think that's...
No, Canada is the loser right now because Carney's not getting a deal, and he can get a deal. All these other countries are able to get deals. The UK made 2 deals. Carney can't get a deal? Is Tom really this dumb? Does he not see that Carney is using Trump as the boogeyman for the next election? This is not ethical. What Carney's doing is not ethical. He's using the situation to his own benefit, to the detriment of Canadians. We're talking serious problems. More and more people losing their places. I see the comments all the time. I got 3 months left. I got 30 days left before I don't know what to do. I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to have to move out. I'm going to have to sleep in my car. Carney doesn't care. Mr. Globalist Banker, so detached from reality, he couldn't give a rat's what happens to everyday Canadian. It's deplorable that you got a guy like this on here, Tom Mulcair, who just doesn't call it out. Does he not see it? Is he so blinded with his TDS, his Trump derangement syndrome? Trump is a tough guy to negotiate, but Carney doesn't want to make a deal. Blanchette called him out. Blanchette, being the whistleblower here, called him out just a couple weeks ago. He went down to America and blew it up that Carney isn't even trying to get a deal. He hasn't talked to Trump in a couple of weeks. There's no plan to get a deal. That should be the alarming thing for all Canadians right now.
It's the big difference. When you're in opposition, you fire at this stuff. I've always believed, and I understood your reference to be about that. I've always believed that governments should not take in more than what they need and shouldn't spend more than what's necessary for the programs that are essential for people. But that last part has changed radically. So we're not only talking about the government programs that we've known about in the past, but the government has to step up to the plate now and help companies like Algoma Steel. Otherwise, again, long-term, we'll be losers. So we've got to get past the Trump phase. It is temporary. It'll be a couple of years. He's already going to be a lame duck in a year. So that'll all change rapidly. But for now, we're very vulnerable, and Canadians understand that.
Yeah, the number one thing we need right now is a deal, not more bailouts for individual companies. And I'll point out, just because it is on my board here, if we go over to Dennis Turcotte, who is the managing partner, Brookfield Private Equity Group. This guy was the president and chief executive officer, as you can see here, Algoma Steel, 2002 to 2008. Is that the reason why Algoma's getting this payout? You be the judge of that.
I imagine, Lisa, that the government, like Brian and Tom both pointed out, will tie the deficit to things like the announcement today or other supports necessary because, in their view, of what's happening with Donald Trump. Does that, do you think, inform or change the Conservative rebuttal at all? Or do you imagine that it stays very much like deficit bad no matter what?
Well, I think that what the Conservatives will attempt to do, and I hope they do, is try to give a little context around it. And the very beginning in 2015, the Liberals said we're going into a deficit because now is the time to invest. Money is cheap and we can do this. And then we went in deficit because it was COVID and they have your back and Canada has to make sure they come out of the pandemic. And now we're faced with yet another crisis, absolutely. But now we have to spend even more. And the key for the Conservatives is to try to get Canadians to think about deficits in the light of, you feel the pain right now in the economy, it's because they've run deficits for the past 10 years. You can argue with me about whether or not that's a true fact, but that is the connectivity between what the Conservatives are saying right now with respect to spending and deficits and what they want Canadians to remember, that a big deficit is actually going to be problematic for them in the short, medium, and long term. But I will say, lastly,
that is a problem because most Canadians don't realize that. It's going to jack up the price of everything. Inflation is the silent thief. Pierre has pointed this out numerous times. If you got 10 loaves of bread, each one is $1. If the government prints a bunch of money, in this case, we're going from $10 to $20, doubles the money supply, we still have 10 loaves of bread. Now each loaf of bread is $2. It's the silent thief. If the government doubles the money supply, everyone just lost half of their money, half of their buying power. Everyday Canadians need to know this because it is the silent thief. You can work your butt off for years. The government can print a whole bunch of money just like Justin Trudeau did, printed more money than all other prime ministers combined, and everyone just lost half our money. And Carney's doing the same thing. We're going to be down to 25% of what we originally had, our buying power, going back just 10 years. Well, what's the point of working? What's the point of paying taxes? What's the point of doing anything if the government is just going to rob everything from us? Blood, sweat, and tears for years and just rob everything from us. It's criminal.
I'm in the Port of Montreal today talking to shippers about how the economy is and what the impact of the U.S. tariffs are. And it is absolutely factual that there are problems in the steel industry, that there's problems in the aluminum industry. Shipping is down 50%, 60% in some cases. This is a very real crisis. It's unfortunate, though, that the Liberals have spent the last 10 years talking about deficits as being something that they're allowed to do and there's no impact. And now they really have to do it. And they have to argue with Conservatives that there's not going to be an impact again.
This is only going to get worse before it gets better.